Hello, Gag. My God, you're out there. Oh, I can hardly wait. I can feel this fantastic surge of creativity coming roaring up to my body. Raindrops is falling on my head. There, see, Jerry? It's gone. Did you see what I did? I just picked up the whole damn console and dropped it. A foot and a half, and it's fine. So it's in there. I know you look doubtful, but I've been around electronic equipment even longer than Skip. Raindrops is falling on my head. Excuse me a minute, gang, here. I just had to resolder the station here. Hey, listen, that's not so funny. I saw a big famous TV star who was a friend of mine one day, due to the fact that they were having trouble with the equipment. He got so bugged. I mean, here he is. He's doing his little bit in front of the camera, and they keep, they're taping the show, and they keep saying, "Uh-oh, sorry, Manny, sorry. Something's wrong here. We're getting little funny hits on the camera here. Do it all over again." He got so mad, he says, "Let me fix that damn thing." And he ran around, took the back off, took the volt-o-meter, and spent 20 minutes repairing the camera. And all the engineers stood around, with egg all over their face. And he says, "All right, now it's fixed, okay? Can we do the show now?" And the guy for 3 years had been in high-level radar repair. He knew more about cameras than them guys behind it. Raindrops is falling. Oh, we've all had that. Hey, I just have to say something here before I get too far out in left field. We'd like to make a brief report on the woman's lib situation from Paso Robles, California. 9-year-old Bonnie McCurdy scored a double win for women's lib, and we have to give her a salute tonight. First, she beat all the boys in her age group in her hometown at the annual punt, pass, kick football competition. Did you hear what I said? Then she came to Paso Robles, where she outthrew this town's 9-year-old boys in the same crowd. She's only 9, see? In the annual cow chip tossing contest. Chick is just cleaning up out there. She's 9. The punt, pass, kick coming. It's only a matter of time, I say. It's only a matter of time before you see a girl shortstop in the major leagues. Yeah. I say it's only a matter of time. I'm making that Shepard's bad prediction for this week. Actually, I think it'd be kind of interesting, personally. It caused a lot of excitement in the locker room, in a lot of ways, Well, it depends on the girl. I mean, if some girls I know, little short, stocky, angry-looking chicks with mustaches. I don't know, but did you know that Billie Jean King, the famous tennis player, is an ex-top-flight softball shortstop? Did you know that? Well, girls' softball is not nearly as big as around here as it is further west. If you get out in places like Iowa and Indiana and that, do you know that the girls' softball team is the biggest team in town? I mean, that's what they really go for. Seriously. And man, they play real fast ball. I mean, it's good baseball they play. And furthermore, in certain towns, now it's changing so fast that for example, a good example of that is in Des Moines. That in certain towns now, the girls' basketball team is the school's basketball team. Now, did you hear that? Did you hear what I said? In other words, if you take a guy like say, Wilt Chamberlain, like if he was in high school now, he would be on the secondary team. In fact, nobody could have seen him. That's right. That's hard to believe it. But that's what's happening in athletics. And if you were a guy like, say, Bill Bradley or something, and you were going to one of those high schools out in, say, for example, Ames, Iowa, there'd be no place for you to play. You'd play intramural stuff, like the skinny guys versus the fat guys in, the gym. But when the big game of the week would come, like, say, you went to Pitcairn High School, the big game would be the girls, and they draw 5,000-6,000 people, Oh, man, I'll tell you. Before we, it's a great change. I'll tell you, baseball could be very decorative, with the right people out there playing it. Really. One time, I have to concede that I have a personal axe to grind. We all do, in life. Can't get around it. We all have personal little things. That there was a time, Jerry, and I have never told you this. I haven't told you this. There was a time. Well, all right, I might as well admit it. When I was fantastically in love with a center, and they were really top flight. They were playing big-time girls softball teams would come from all over the country and I'd play there. And they played night games. My old man loved to go to these things. He really loved to go to night softball games. Now, they played fast pitch. Now, I might explain to you. It wasn't this big 16-inch pillow that they throw around here, the East, the Faith East. Now, it was a fast pitch, you know, the big windmill wind up and pow, you know, they'd lay that ball and the team, our team was a pretty good team. I mean, they played 500, maybe 600 ball and against these top flight teams. Well, there was a rookie joined the team. I remember I'm sitting in the stands. I'm about 8 or 9. See, there's a rookie joined the team. And there was a lot of stuff in the sport pages in town. You know, it shows rookie joins team, you know, bought from Alameda, California, something like that. And here's this chick. And she was blonde and beautiful. I mean, Lou, you know the kind, you know, just, you know what I mean? She the kind, you know, that if you had the feeling if you squeezed her, she'd go, eek, you know, she just really, you know. Well, anyway, I see this picture. See, and at that time, I was, you know, going to movies all the time on Saturday afternoons with Schwartz and Flick. And I had a lot of secret loves. Everybody does. You know, you never mentioned the Schwartz or Flick. How, for example, could I tell them that I was deeply in love with Ann Rutherford? Did you ever hear of Ann Rutherford? Nobody else has. And that's the trouble. See, if you're in love with somebody really big, everybody sort of agrees with you, you know. Like today, if you were in love with, say, from afar, with Sophia Loren, everybody would say, well, I understand that, you know. They'd laugh at you, but they'd say, oh, yeah, you know, I understand it. But when you say you're in love with Ann Rutherford, that takes explanation. So, you know, and also takes, in many cases, apologizing, too. So, you know, for, you know, having a bad head. But, nevertheless, I fell in love with this Ann Rutherford. Have any of you ever heard of Ann Rutherford? You did. Who? No, it's not the chick that works down in the county, Jerry. Come on, that's a different Ann Rutherford. Are you sure you know who I'm talking about? That's right. You're a movie cuckoo, aren't you? Yeah, that's right. You would know about Ann Rutherford. She pops up in trivia exams occasionally. Well, Ann Rutherford, in case you're interested, was the second girlfriend of Andy Hardy, which was met Mickey Rooney, in the Andy Hardy movies. Now, the first girlfriend was Judy Garland. The second girlfriend was Ann Rutherford. Well, you know, I'm about 9, see, I'm a kid, see, and I'd go to see these movies. They were always playing Saturday afternoon. They'd throw an Andy Hardy. There was an idea around that kids liked Andy Hardy movies. They're terrible. That we didn't like Andy Hardy movies. My mother liked Andy Hardy movies. But what we wanted to see, you know, was a lot of shooting and guys riding around on horses, you know, and all that jazz. And we would go Saturday afternoon, and they'd have 2 giant features that involved guys riding around on horses and shooting. And the third feature they would throw in, I guess for the more effete kids, would be something like Andy Hardy puts on a show. You know, some great movie like that. Of course, we'd leave usually about halfway through that one. Either that or we would start throwing popcorn around and yelling and hollering. Then when it was over, then we'd go back to serious watching. See, the thing about watching a triple feature was that you never left the theater. You watched the triple feature maybe for 3 showings, which would mean that you would see 9 movies. You know, instead of long. Have you wondered why I'm permanently L-shaped? You know, you get this L-shaped triple feature paralysis, which hits you right down here back of the knees if you sit through too many of those. See, and I've got it. You know, great muscles in the back there from sitting in an L-shaped form, and yeah, it's a terrible disease. It has afflicted many people, and so I've overcome it though. See, I have special corrective shoes, and I have the whole thing. But it's called triple feature syndrome. Excuse me, madam. You're standing too close. Get off the microphone cord, will you? But nevertheless, when you're in a very impressionable age, and so one day we were seeing these great movies, Roy Rogers, and what was his name? The name of his horse, Trigger, and we're seeing Dale walking around there, and everybody's cheering, and on comes another great giant feature we saw. I think it was something like Gene Autry. He's walking around with his horse, he wears this fancy suit, and he sings his guitar. You know what? That never went over with the kids. I might as well warn you there. No, don't think that the kids dug Gene Autry's playing his guitar and riding that horse around. No way. The minute he would whip out the guitar, you'd hear, boo! Is that the singer, boo? And, that was not what we went for. It was in the last, or maybe the second to the last reel, when the stagecoach would approach. All that shooting and yelling. And there's always a guy that jumps down and he's hanging onto that thing between the horses, you know that big scene. They always do that. Well, that was what we went for, see. Of course, we didn't realize at the time that they used the same scene in all the movies. They just clipped it out and pasted it in the next movie. It's the same thing, you know. One guy shot that once. It's still being used on television. You know, that pops up on Bonanza every couple of weeks. So, nevertheless, I was at an impressionable age, like I say, and there was one afternoon when I had, unfortunately, I'd had too many Milky Way bars, you know, kind of feeling a little euphoria there. And on comes the Andy Hardy movie, which usually was the signal to go to the John, to walk around and go and buy some popcorn and start arguing and hitting guys. We'd sit in the balcony and start throwing stuff down, you know, and all that stuff. We never watched it. Well, on comes this movie, and there was a scene right in the beginning where you saw this chick, this fantastic chick. Now, at that point, I was not really interested in girls, you know. That's what bothered me. See, I thought it was kind of sick, because I had never reported in at home that girls had much interest to me at that time. I was about 9, see. You're interested in other things at that point. You agree with that, don't you? In general. And so, there's a certain intellectual curiosity, of course. It usually involves biological things. But as far as a deep interest and total involvement and complete concern, which, by the way, reminds me, this is WOR New York. It just sort of fit, that's all. I'm sorry, friends. But, chauvinism pops its ugly head everywhere. Do you have, speaking of chauvinism, the minute I mention the name of this radio station, immediately, what's the first thing I think of? What's the first thing you think of, huh? John gambling? No. Commercials. Hit it.
Hi, this is Tex Ritter for the New York, New Jersey American Motors dealers. And they're coming on strong. Coming on strong. Coming on strong. 'Cause we've got the quality in the cars you want to buy. The protection of AMC at a price you're glad to pay. Drive the number one value in a carefree way. What America wants, America gets from American Motors. Finer cars and the best fire protection plan going. See the cars that are headed for a second straight record-breaking year. See your New York, New Jersey American Motors dealers soon. And tell them Tex sent you.
Okay, Tex. Okay, man. You get off my foot and I'll go on and do my business. Okay, Tex? Take that damn horse out of here, too. Say, friends, you need tires. Excuse me, I slipped right into that, you know. Yeah, you're listening to Cousin Gene here, and I'd like to talk to you just like the way we talked back in the days when I was working a thing called the Ohio River Jamboree. You folks out there need tires? Well, you see the Tire Pro at your local General Tire headquarters for all your tire needs. From sports cars to sedans, compacts to king-size cars, General Tire makes the tires you need. They're wonderful tires, and at prices are easy to afford. Choose from rayon cord tires, nylon cord tires, puncture sealing tires, steel belted radial tires, and many more. It's not your General Tire with a big red G. And by the way, all you buckaroos out there in Plainfield, you visit the new store at 815 West Front Street at Grant Avenue, and you ask for Joseph Vasta. Also, you visit Harvey Kushner at Howard Square Stores, 2886 Atlanta Avenue in Brooklyn. Yeah, that's terrible, isn't it? What I have done in the past. I would say, folks, if you like to eat, you'll love New York Magazine this week. You certainly will, because in it you read how author Mimi Sheraton ate her way through Bloomingdale's food shop. Every single item, all 1,961 of them, she's just an absolute pig. It took her 11 months to taste all them items, all $2,322.18 worth. So it don't cost you that. Ms. Sheridan, that's MS, provides New York Magazine with a guide to her trip through Bloomingdale's garden of exotic tastes, the delightful and the horrible, too. And she rates everything for you, you know, she's not. So read, quote, how I ate everything in Bloomingdale's food shop in this week's New York Magazine, and use it as your guide to any one of the city's gourmet shops. Yes, sir, this old friend, this is your Cousin Gene here. And we're just kicking it around. We're sent to you every week at this same time by Purina Chick Chow in the checkered bag. And I'd like to say this, if you got slow laying chickens out there, you ask for Purina Chick Chow Special Lay and Mash. You'll find it at your favorite feed store. Tell them Cousin Gene sent you. Now, I'd like to repeat again, that's Chick Chow Special Lay and Mash. It's for slow laying chicks. You'll find it in that big checkerboard bag. And now let's get on with all them songs and all them things that you've been writing in and asking for. Let's go. 1, 2, 3, 4. Come on, let's sing it out, King. All together now. This goes to Mrs. L.W. McBullen, who writes from Rabbit Hash, Kentucky. She says, would you please play that funny loud noise record that you got down there at that radio station of yours? So we'd be glad to send it out there. In just a moment, we'll have prayer time. I want all of you to sit around and listen to that. And, of course, then we're going to have march around breakfast time. And don't forget now, we're sent to you by Purina Chickchow and Purina Chickchow Special Laying Mash. Beep, 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 beep. Oh, yeah. All right. This is a serious program. We can't mess around like that. Do you see how I get carried away? Just terrible. Get carried away like that. Hey, listen, I have to, on the air here, I got to answer a couple of on-the-air letters because we can't answer mail. No way. And this guy writes and says, Shepherd, he says, wait a minute here. Yeah, he says, Shepherd, he says, if you please send a picture, he says, I want to know how you look. I'll tell you this. You ain't going to send no picture to him. But I'll tell you this. If you want to see a picture, I'm scared. And I'll just answer it on the air here. You just walk past Carnegie Hall, you'll see a picture of me. Did you see that, Jerry? Ain't that fantastic? My God almighty. I'll tell you. It scares me. But, of course, I'm scared of a lot of things. I'll tell you, it's even worse if you get scared of your own image. But let me say this. That everywhere you look, you see mystery popping up. I mean, it's just popping up everywhere. Now, for no reason at all, I suddenly found myself dropping into Tex Ritter dialect. Did you notice that? Now, what made me do that? What strange forces are at work? I'm suddenly, and I imagine a lot of you think I made up Purina Chickchow Special Chick Laying Mash, didn't you? No, man, that's the real thing. And if you've got a chick that's slow laying out there, you just get some of that stuff. It'll work. You slip that right in their orange juice, and well, that's another thing here. We won't get into that. I mean, it gets kind of complicated. Life does. You notice that? Sometimes, now you just think now, for example, in that commercial, they're talking about a king-size tire, right? Now, the implication is always with us that kings live this fantastic life, right? I mean, every time you hear about that, there's like king-size cigarettes, king-size drinks. King, you figure the kings really got the world by the you-know-what, I mean, they bring them these big drinks. Yeah, I go to this joint the other night, and they had one of these little table tents, the table. It says king-size martini. It says, try our new king-size martini. So you just ask for it. So I says, I'll have one of them king-size martinis, and she says, all right, I'll bring one. And she goes away, and she comes back with this little plastic tray, and on the plastic tray, she's got one of them glasses. It looks like a little spittoon on a kind of a platform, it's sticking up there, one of them round ones. And she says, here's your king-size martini, sir, and she lays it down in front of me. Well, I realize that the king-size martini ain't what it seems to be. What it is a king-size galboon full of ice. That's really what it is. You don't drink much ice. Me, I've never been so much for eating ice. But I do like, occasional martini in between it. And so I'm sipping away there, and it's all gone. Next thing I know, I'm sipping ice water. And I says, well, what's this king-size martini? She said, well, that's the way kings like it. I said, oh, I see. Well, of course, you can't argue with truth. And you really can't. See, it's always implied that kings have everything big, everything big and good, right? Well, I don't want to disillusion you tonight, but I'm just going to have to lay something on you may not like. Now, not many of you, of course, get a chance to read English newspapers regularly, do you? Well, I do. And I want to tell you, if you think Nixon is getting his lumps from all kinds of people yelling and hollering at any president that's in, whoever he might be, you ought to hear what happens to kings and queens and princesses. I mean, hardly a day goes by but what some paper isn't just taking off on Prince Philip. I mean, because, the kind of suit he's wearing, or he's setting a bad example because he didn't have a hat on last week and the hat makers are yelling, And he went out the other day without his rubbers out in the rain. And what's this going to do to the international galoshes makers and all that stuff, you know? And so they just take their lumps. And the other day I'm reading the Daily Express. You see, what I do, you see, I'll be honest with you, that I keep these English papers under the desk I got there. I got this knee-hole desk, you know, and I sit there and I stick my knees under it, you know, and I look around real official-like. And I have a paper clip thing on there, you know, makes staples on it. Once in a while I take up a piece of paper and I staple them together. Now, I don't have no use to do that, but it looks like I'm really doing something, see? So I staple these papers. I boom like that, I hit it like that, and the stapler comes out. I'll never forget the time I had this friend named Jack Pyle. He was showing me how a stapler worked. He got a new stapler, you know, those little hand staplers. He said, you look at this little thing. It's fantastic. And he stapled his little finger and his middle finger together. By mistake. Have you ever done that? You think you can. He just said, wow, open it. They say, oh, my God, look at my fingers. And he stapled his two fingers together, you know. It's just like he was a frog. You know, just, you know, how frogs have webbed feet. He had a webbed hand there, you know. Fingers all stapled. That'd be pretty good for some shortstops, I know. You know, let a lot of stuff go through lately, but that's another thing. I don't want to get into that. You know, athletics bore so many people, which is kind of sad. I mean, I hate to see that, really. That just shows you ain't got no interest in defeat and all the thrill and ecstasy of victory and all that, you know, and that's just too bad. Do you agree with that? But do you now? I want a definite answer here. I don't want to just keep going. Do you? My God, I can get no reaction at all. I'll tell you, it must be this microphone is not hooked up. They ain't hearing me in there, that's all. Oh, well, nevertheless, you want to hear about the king. Now, you think that... Now, the reason I keep these English newspapers, you know, around is because once in a while, you know, somebody will come in, somebody who's real uppity, like one of them salesmen comes down from the 23rd floor or something, see. So as soon as I hear he's coming, I hear them footsteps coming. They walk with a real heavy tread, you know, these salesmen. They got these expensive shoes, you know. They pay, maybe $8, $10, $15 for a pair, you know. And they come clumping down there. I know one of them salesmen is coming, wearing them, you know, them $9 shoes, you know, with the zippers up the side, the chains hanging down the back, you know, and the big high heels. And he comes clumping down. And so I reach under my desk in the knee hole and I whip out my English newspaper. No, that gets him every time. I'm sitting there reading an English newspaper. Something about anything English that, you know, really sets you apart. Sets you apart. I have a friend, for example, who's got to hang up, say, for example, he does, you know. He's one of these guys. He comes from a place called Raintree, Georgia. You ever heard of Raintree, Georgia? Well, I have, and you're hearing about it now. And he come up from Raintree, and he brought up with him all of his bad habits that he had from down in Raintree. For example, he loves to chew tobacco. Now, chewing tobacco is not a thing they do often in the agencies around New York. You know that. I mean, it's just simply not done. He also likes to snuff a little snuff once. So he likes a pinch now and then, you know. And he grew up with that. His old grandma and his old mammy and his daddy, they all pinched snuff and they chewed tobacco. And it ain't easy to break your habits. And he likes it. Well, he comes up there here and, you know, his particular favorite is beech nut. He likes beech nut chewing tobacco. He takes it in the big wad, you know, wads it up. You ever done that, Art? You ever chewed tobacco? You ain't no real ball player then. I mean, the real ones, they do it. So, well, let's put it this way. The big ones do it. So, nevertheless, a couple of days he's chewing beech nut, and he realized everybody's laughing. But he discovered something. He goes to one of these fancy tobacco shops here in town, and he found out they sold English chewing tobacco there. And it comes with these old English letters all over the front. And so he began chewing English chewing tobacco in the agency, and now it's a very chic thing to do, because it's English. He also uses English and French snuff now. You don't use that stuff, you know, that comes out of the machines down there at the pool room. And, no. So if you do anything English, you're okay, whatever it is. You buy an English bullwhip, you're not a sadist. You're just an Anglophile. But you buy a bullwhip down on 14th Street, and you're just one of them bad people. But, so, you know, it's 6 of one, half dozen other. So I don't know how I got out of the subject tonight, but it's important to point out that the English have a certain mystique with the average person, a certain panache. I'm going to use a French word. It's panache, which is a kind of a candy they make with little pieces of almond in it. You've probably had them little almond panaches, haven't you? But nevertheless, he discovered English works. So I have discovered the same thing. When anybody comes in, like Mr. Brown walks in, you know, he's going to lay some bad goodies on me, you know. He's going to lay a couple of bad memos. Well, I just whip out my English paper. Well, of course, he turns and walks right out. And either that or they get kind of scared and nervous and ask if they can talk to me. So I'm sitting there reading my English paper the other day while this salesman's trying to bust through, and it's the Daily Express. And I'm going to read something to you that may shock you if you believe in kings. I mean, most Americans believe in kings more than Englishmen do. You know that. All the royalty just makes it big in this country. And over in England, they just keep dunning them and telling them that their credit cards run out. And that's about it, But here is on the front page of the Daily Express a story that may just give you a little view of English royalty that you did not have. And I quote, it's written by a man named Colin Pratt. It's kind of a good English name, and I'm going to read it to you. A veritable Niagara of noise. That is what they are calling the royal flush at Windsor. Now, Windsor is the castle, that's Windsor Castle. You know where that is, where the kings hang around, and Queen Elizabeth II and all those big people, they sit around there and live there, see. A veritable Niagara of noise. Astonished sanitary official Mr. Ernest Batchelor says the castle loos. Now, maybe you don't know what a loo is, but a loo is just a john. That's what it is. They call it an English phrase. L-O-O is the loo. The castle loos drown out even the roar of jumbo jets passing overhead. He claims the noise of the johns beats the jumbo by 2 or 3 decibels, and they've taken it with a meter from 100 yards away. I mean, they got johns that just let out a terrible roar. You've probably been in places where it's a little embarrassing. And he's got it on tape to prove it. Wouldn't it be kind of nice to buy a couple of tapes of famous johns around the world? This is Mr. Batchelor. He's director of the Council of British Ceramic Sanitary Manufacturers. And I quote, here's what he says. I've never heard a toilet with such a prodigiously high noise level. Now, he was an angry Scotsman. And they are most of the ceramic engineers in England. Did you think I did that pretty good there, all right? Huh? I'll do it again for you. I never heard a prodigiously high noise level. They're really noisy loos. After running a test on a lavatory outside the state apartments, he added yesterday, and we quote, I'm not surprised Prince Philip complained about the loos. He certainly did. Well, here's the story. Last year, when he visited the potteries, when you're a prince, you got to go visit all this stuff, where they make the pots and pans and make a, ceremonial state visit. Last year, when he visited the potteries, Prince Philip asked if it wasn't possible to develop a silent loo. He told the Potters Union officials, and we quote here, this is the prince speaking, the ones that we have at Windsor are terrible. They keep me awake at night. Well, you can't think of the king there or the prince lying there and he's being kept awake by the johns roaring when they flush him. But that's what happens. Mr. Batchelor's check on the Windsor loos was part of a survey his council ordered on 4 major tourist centers. The others are at Stratford-on-Avon. Of course, this is where Shakespeare hung around. York and Canterbury, of all places. Mr. Batchelor examined 7 public loos. The johns in Windsor. 2 of them in the castle. He added, he discovered that there were none inside the state apartment where the public go, but this is understandable. If they are so noisy as the gents outside, no one in the adjoining throne room could ever be able to hear themselves speak. These are the loudest loos I've ever heard. He says that would be hardly desirable if the Queen was in residence hearing them loos all the time roaring. Well, that's true, I suppose. And then I have to quote Mr. Batchelor again, who is, as you can tell, an angry, very concerned Scotsman. He said, there can hardly be a place in the castle where this loo cannot be heard. You hear it everywhere in the castle. I should think that they welcome the jets that take their minds off the noise of the loos flushing. The jet is a kind of a nice footnote. Buckingham Palace said yesterday, there's a whole establishment there. They absolutely refute the prince. Now, you'd think that the prince would have a little weight around there, that his word would be law if he's being kept awake by the johns flushing, and he said it right there, that they would believe him. You agree? Well, Buckingham Palace officially stated, we are not aware that Prince Philip's sleep has been disturbed. End of statement. So, he's been sat on by the establishment. I mean, the prince. Well, now you just never see that side of life. That real life side of life when you visit places like Buckingham Palace. Now, I was in Buckingham Palace once. I went there. I took the tour, as everybody does, goes over to England. And I'll concede that at the time I was there were maybe 500 or 600 people on the long line walking through this big hall. See, that's all I saw of it, really. And at no point did I hear the johns flushing. in the throne room especially, which would have been somewhat symbolic, and then possibly even fitting. However, I told you, much of life is in bad taste. I've warned you about this before. There's no way to argue about it. And now here on the old show here, with the time just moving along, that old clock on the wall is saying it's time once again for us to dip into our vast file of requests. And here's a lady writes to me here from just outside Louisville. She says, "Would you please play a nice tune for my husband Elmer? Elmer's been asleep since 1934, and we just kind of think it'd be kind of nice to play a tune for him." And so we're playing this tune for Elmer out there. Lives in town just outside of Louisville, Kentucky. I can't make out her writing here. It's kind of smeared here on the letter, and I see there's a little bit drops of, it looks like grape jelly on the bottom of the envelope here, but I'd just like to salute Elmer out there. He's been asleep since 1934. Of course, Elmer ain't along, and, he ain't along in that thing by himself. I just tell you this. I'm sorry to say that many people I know have been asleep longer than that. I know some people ain't been awake ever in their life. Have you noticed that, Art? I ain't going to put you down there. Oh, I'm sorry. I prefer Art. Because it seems to me anybody who throws a ball like you is better. By the way, can you get a baseball cap on over your hair? I just questioned that. Did you? Come on, let's bring it up there big there. I want that guy to hear that, too. I'm sorry, man. Oh, that's very good. Very good. That's nice. That's nice. I'll never forget the time, though, a friend of mine. I'll tell you, that brings up a very, kind of a interesting point. Have you ever heard of a request show on the radio? Now, what a request show is, where people write in, they ask for tunes, and, they want it to be dedicated to all the gang out at the, at East Hampton having a pajama party and all that jazz. See, well, one night, this friend of mine, whom I knew very well, so he did this request show. He hated it. Oh, God, did he hate it. Because if you ever open the floodgates to the public will inevitably pick the worst possible stuff. In fact, to quote George Ade, it is impossible. This is a great quote, friends. I quote George Ade. It is impossible to underestimate the intelligence of the average walking around citizen. And so if you come to him and you say, "What do you want?" He's always going to ask for the worst possible stuff. You say, "So my friend is working on this request show, and he is really getting up to, he's getting uptight because he is playing all this bad music. And they keep requesting the same thing." That's another thing. The public has a nutty single-mindedness. He wants to hear the same thing over and over again. And so my buddy, who's on the, he's on the other end, he's handing it out. He got so sick and tired of this that one night, in the middle of his big Saturday night request shows, these teenagers listening, millions of them, and he's dedicating tunes to the gang out at the Route 3 drive, and, until it's coming out of his ears, see, and he hates it. So one night, he had a policy, see, anything you request, you play, see. So here he is, he's sitting there reading these requests off, the usual jazz, and all of a sudden, about 2/3 of the way into the show, he says, "Now, here's a request from, let's see, it's from Pam, Pat, Charlie, Bill, Max, and little Chucky, who write to me out here from, it's from Ballackinwood, just outside of Pennsylvania. And they've requested Mahler's Second Symphony, played by the London Philharmonic. And they'd like to hear the entire symphony. And okay, kids, all of you out there listening tonight in Ballackinwood, here it is, Mahler's Second Symphony, played by the London Symphony under Sir Thomas Beecham." And boom, bum, 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 on comes the Second Symphony. Well, if you know anything about Mahler's Second Symphony, he presented it just like any other record. See, well, this Second Symphony goes on for roughly 1 hour and 17 minutes. It goes on for 1 hour and 17 minutes, this symphony, and it comes in like 3 LPs in an alligator case. And he just played it all the way. And, of course, the phones are ringing. People are yelling and screaming, what's going on here? How come you'd play this? What's this junk you're playing here when we could all be out here listening to the Stones? What's this junk? And now Mahler's Second Symphony is roaring out. And, of course, my friend just kept saying, "Well, I'm playing it for Pam and Chucky and Charlie and little Fred out there in Ballackinwood. Their request, they got just as much right to their request as yours." And nobody could argue that. But... and I thought, what a ploy this was, see, because if you ever did do a real request show, That's the way it would be. And you know the only place I've ever heard a genuine request show, really, where they really did play anything you requested, was in Australia. There was an Australia radio station that I heard one time, and I think it was in, was it in Melbourne? It was not in Sydney. It was in the town outside. I think it was Melbourne. Anyway, they had a request show on there. See, and of course, you know, the Australians, they sound a little bit like Cockneys. They don't sound quite English, and they don't sound quite American, and they don't really sound quite Cockney. There's a kind of an in-between. You've heard it, Australians. You know, they're Australians. And he's on there, so he says, oh, it's all request time now. And he's laying it out. See, they come on like that. And I figure, well, you know, here's the usual. Just sure enough, they lead off with a couple of quick Beatles things, and, you know, and then the next thing is a couple of Stones. And the next thing I hear, I can't believe it, is 3 Chopin etudes. He just, and now here we have a request here. And here it comes from Mrs. L.B. in Perth, and she would like to hear, let's see, Chopin's Etude number 422, played by, I believe it's Van Cliburn. Well, all right, fine, here it comes right out to you, Mrs. P.D. in Perth. And he says, baby on. I said, what the hell? And it was a great show because you never know what you were going to hear next. No way. Now we're very single-minded. You know, we're in our country, we never mix anything. We just don't. That if a guy has a request show and everybody's requesting rock, that's all you can get played on that thing, you know? Nobody's going to have a tap dance record. You know, by the way, speaking of tap dance records, you ever heard a tap dance record? Have you ever heard them? Well, you have. Where'd you hear a tap dance record? Who was doing the tap dancing on that record? Or are you just saying that? When did you hear a tap dance record? Well, did you know guys made tap dance records? They're bad. They're nothing to listen to. I agree. They're just about like on a par with your favorite bugle calls. And you have a few of those laid on you. They're kind of fun. But a tap dance record. In fact, I'll give you a brass fig McGee with a bronze oak leaf palm. Can you tell me who had a big hit record? A big hit record. I'm talking a big one. Of a guy whistling. Whistling. He's a whistler. Famous whistler. Now, how's that for a bit of totally useless trivia? It was a hit. I mean, it was like on the charts. Who? I'm not going to tell you. Why should I give you? This is all I've got left of me. I mean, it's the knowledge that sets us apart, friends. And if I start giving you knowledge, what are you going to do? You know, you're going to walk around big down at the McDonald's, you know, telling people you know everything when you don't. Now, I'm just going to ask you that. What famous jazz record, by the way? It's famous in jazz. Almost all the jazz dictionaries. It's a great, curious jazz record that featured a whistler. I mean, the big solo on it was a whistler accompanied by, they were doing a sort of a duet, a bass player. Who was that? And what was it? I'll give you one clue. It was not Slam Stewart. Who was it? How's that for a name? Nor was it Stuff Smith. Who was it? I'll give you a clue. It sounded like this. That was the opening phrase. That was the next phrase. So you see, it gets sneakier all the time, doesn't it? And you see, you can just realize, you know, what a complicated world it is. No way for you to argue that it is. What with the Johns and the Windsor Castle roaring out every night like that, princes not able to sleep, shepherd tossing and turning, guys throwing slow balls when they should be throwing fastballs, the fact other guys are falling in love with center fielders and play on a girls' softball team. It's fantastic. Hey, I never did finish that story, did I? Well, we'll save that for later, friends. There's so much for later. Would you please bring it up big there, Al? Big. Lay it on me. There you go. It's the worst piece of music, by the way, I ever heard. That's why I use it. Sickening. Rise with them. Now, don't forget now, friends. Carnegie Hall, Tuesday, the 17th. That is an order.
Oh, I see. Of course, this is WOR New York, naturally. You stay tuned for Big Lester Smith in the news. News and detail on the hour from the WOR newsroom. President Nixon's top security advisor, Dr. Henry Kissinger, who was supposed to have flown home from Paris tonight after an unprecedented 3 days of secret talks with the communist negotiators in Paris, unexpectedly extended his stay for further secret negotiations on peace in Vietnam. WOR's Clifford Evans reports.
The White House again says no comment, but the fact is that when Henry Kissinger and Le Duc Tho had met 17 times between 1969 and earlier this year, each time they met for only a matter of hours. 2 weeks ago, they met for 2 days, and now they have agreed to a 4th day of negotiations in Paris. Kissinger and Le Duc Tho do not make small talk. From all indications, they appear to have broken through and found common ground in their effort to end the war in Vietnam. We now wait for a further word from the White House from Paris. Clifford Evans, Washington correspondent, WOR News.
Meanwhile, South Vietnam's Foreign Minister Tran Van Lam told newsmen in Saigon that the talks between Kissinger and the North Vietnamese in Paris are at what he called an extremely serious stage. He asked commentators and observers not to make speculations which could cause difficulty in the negotiations, even as President Chu is meeting with United States Ambassador Ellsworth Bunker for their 3rd such meeting in less than a week. Van Lam said the position of his government is, and we quote, "We are prepared to discuss a ceasefire with the North Vietnamese at any time whatsoever and at any place." With the presidential elections only 4 days away, the Indochina War still figures largely in the campaign. Harrison Salisbury, the op-ed page editor of the New York Times, addressed a meeting of the Overseas Press Club in Manhattan tonight. WR's John Scott reminded him that some Democrats are charging that the current visit of Dr. Kissinger to Paris, the secret talks with the communists, is merely a political trick. Scott asked Salisbury his feeling on the subject, and Salisbury replied,
"Well, I doubt that it's a political move per se. I think that Dr. Kissinger and the President have been working very hard to try and come up with a solution on Vietnam before the election. Now, there's maybe some political payoff in that, but they've been working at this for a long, long time. So I don't see this as politics. On the other hand, I really don't see much chance that they're going to be able to come up with something, because these negotiations always are wrecked on the rock of Chu. We're backing Chu. Chu is not going to go away. He's not going to give up in the South. And to try and accommodate his insistence on remaining and the equally hard insistence on the part of the North that he must go is...